And now I want to introduce our panel. We have, I'm very excited. We have a panel, 5 panelists from very different perspectives and really exciting experiences to be shared. I'll briefly introduce them, and then I'm going to give them the opportunity to describe where they're coming from so that you know what is the connection to the topic. So we have Mr. Atter Hanoura, who is the director of the Central PPP Unit in the Ministry of Finance of Egypt. He has been with the Ministry of Finance since 2007, where he was invited basically to set it up and to lead the drafting of the PPP legal framework in Egypt, and has managed a large number of PPP projects in utilities, transport, health, you name it. And before that, he worked with USAID and the World Bank. We have Mr. Syed Uddin, who is Principal Investment Solutions Specialist at the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB. 20 years of experience in PPPs for different governments, the UK, Bangladesh, and Uzbekistan, in addition to private practice with PwC UK. And he recently joined the AIIB to lead the development of the PPP advisory practice over there. Third, we have Mr. Ekow Coleman, who is the Principal Infrastructure Specialist in the African Development Bank. He is with the Infrastructure Partnership Division of AfDB, and that division has the NEPAD Infrastructure Project Preparation Fund that he'll talk about, and the Infrastructure Consortium for Africa. And they're leading and coordinating the implementation of their new PPP framework that was recently approved by their board of directors. And as part of that, they're establishing an Africa PPP Development Fund to support the preparation of PPP projects. So lots to talk about from the AfDB perspective. Before, he was with the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. We are very pleased to have with us also Ms. Erin Musonda Simbi, who's the Director of Public Investment Planning in the Ministry of Finance and National Planning of Zambia. More than 25 years of experience, both in the public and the private sector, in banking, in manufacturing, in the public sector, and it has been for a long time a highly respected economist in the Ministry of Finance of Zambia. And finally, we have Mr. Johnson Mwawasi Kilangi, who's the Director of Taita Taveta Investment and Development Corporation, an expert with many years of experience with PPPs in East Africa. And he's director, as I said, of the Taita Taveta County Investment and Development Corporation Board, and is advising on infrastructure investment. He was the founder and CEO of Miondo Misingi Hub that provides financing advisory services, and he founded the Africa Project Finance Program that has trained more than 500 professionals in project finance and PPPs across 15 countries. So with that, what I want to do first with the panel is to give each of them a couple of minutes to tell them where they're coming from, what is the institution that they're working, so that it gives you a little bit of a context beyond my very brief bio. So Atter, you go first. Tell us about the PPP unit in Egypt.
Thank you, Eddie. The PPP unit in Egypt actually was established in late 2006, and we went through a lot of issues here while establishing the PPP unit, where in Africa and the region, there was no PPP units to learn from their experience, so we have to learn it the hard way. Most of our knowledge and mentoring came from Europe, UK in particular, and some other countries, which is not actually, let me say, appropriate to copy and paste successful project somewhere else and put it in a different country. Actually, it never fly. We went through a lot of projects. Personally, I came from an engineering background. I'm an engineer, and I took my diploma in the large procurement from the ILO, and then I had some financing studies, and recently, 10 years back, I took my law degree just to be able to manage such PPP complex projects, we call.
Excellent.
That's in general.
Thank you, Atter. Thank you very much for that brief introduction. Let me pass on to Syed. Syed, tell us a little bit about the AIIB perspective. How are you seeing the importance of PPPs in your portfolio? What is your mission as you have entered the AIIB team?
Thanks, Syed, and thank you for inviting me to the panel. So I joined the AIIB, as you mentioned, a couple of months ago. The whole vision was to look at how we can support different member countries in terms of increasing their access to private financing. There's a target to look at reduction of sovereign financing and moving to private sector. And what is important is to invest in upstream development of projects in order to open up the sort of pipeline for that. In terms of this session, I will mainly be drawing on my experience for the last 12 years nearly, where I worked in two countries. Previously, I was in Uzbekistan for the last 5 years, and I supported the country in terms of development of the PPP program there, including working on a PDF facility. And prior to that, I was in Bangladesh, and I again set up the Bangladesh PPP program, and also set up a PDF facility there. So in this session, I would like to draw on my experiences of that and share that with you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And now let me move to Ekow. Tell us a little bit about the African Development Bank, the unit you're in, the NEPAD Infrastructure Project Preparation Fund, and some of the other activities that you're undertaking.
All right. So thank you, Ede, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, wherever you are around the world. So I'm with the Infrastructure Partnerships Division of the African Development Bank, and the division hosts what we call the NEPAD Infrastructure Project Preparation Special Fund, which is a fund that is targeted at regional member countries, regional economic countries, to prepare high-quality, viable regional infrastructure projects within the energy sector, the water sector, transport, and ICT. The division also hosts the Infrastructure Consortium for Africa that is involved in publishing a flagship report known as the Infrastructure Financing Trends in Africa. The division is also hosting the PPP Transaction Advisory Services team of the African Development Bank, which was recently put together about 1 year to 2 years now, to provide transaction advisory services to regional member countries. As a division as well, and as the bank as a whole, we're also spearheading in collaboration with the African Union and Africa 50, what we call the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, which is putting together a $500 million facility with one pillar targeted at project preparation in the amount of $100 million. And the other pillar, which is project development, which is mobilizing $400 million to catalyze green infrastructure investment on the continent. So, as a division, of course, we collaborate with various partners as well, notably with the World Bank's Global Infrastructure Facility in trying to, co-finance various project preparation activities as well. Maybe I'll speak more on the NEPAD Infrastructure Project Preparation Facility once we get to the next set of questions. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction and for all the different funds and activities that you're taking in your work. And I'm really very pleased that now Irene can join us from Zambia. Can you say a few words about what is happening in Zambia in the Ministry of Finance in terms of PPPs? Just a brief introduction.
Okay, thank you so much. As mentioned, I'm Irene, and I'm sitting in the Ministry of Finance and National Planning. I've been in the Ministry of Finance for over 20 years, and have done quite a roundup within the Ministry of Finance. I was under economic management. I moved to public-private partnerships. Then I'm sitting in the public investment planning department. So in the ministry, I think I've done a full cycle in terms of understanding the nitty-gritties that pertain to public-private partnership and public investment generally. And I think I'll speak more to what my experience has been in terms of preparation of public project preparation funds or facilities. As you may know that PPPs are relatively new in Zambia, and we recently just had a new act that was enacted in 2023, which has provided a provision to establish a project preparation fund to support the PPP.
And we look forward to hearing all of the details about the fund in our next question, Irene. Thank you so much for that introduction. And I can see that your camera is now working very well. So thank you again.
Thank you.
For the connection. And now let's go to Johnson in Kenya. So Johnson, a brief description of where you're coming from so that the audience knows a little bit about yourself and your organization.
Thank you, Eddie. Briefly, so my name is Johnson. I come from Taita Taveta Investment and Development Corporation, where I sit as a board. It's very important for me to mention that the new constitution of Kenya created 47 devolved governments. So Taita Taveta is one of them. And another important milestone to also mention is that in 2021, the Kenyan government enacted the new PPP Act 2021, which now recognizes county governments as contracting authorities that are allowed to enter into PPP contracts. So based on that development, the county government of Taita Taveta incorporated the investment corporation, and the idea is to make sure that we create a legal instrument that is able to effectively enter into contract with the private sector. So I'll be discussing more what we are doing these early stages and sharing more experience as to how we are working together to access these funds.
Fantastic, Johnson. Thank you very much for joining us today. So as you see, we have a very diverse group of practitioners from different countries, from different institutions, but all with a lot of experience on these issues of project preparation funds. We're going to go through a round of brief presentations, brief descriptions of their experiences with a specific case of a project preparation fund. Some have been very advanced with many years, some are very new and taking the first step. And we brought this diversity together so that you in the audience can get a feel for how it is evolving this practice on PPFs. And we're going to start with Atter, who is going to tell us a little bit what has been the experience in Egypt with a new project preparation facility that has been set up. And Victoria will help us with a couple of slides that will help Atter describe the case. Atter, we're all yours.
Thank you. Actually, I want to give a little bit of experience over the last 17, 18 years working on this. Just a brief. Project preparation fund is essential. And project preparation is the most important and crucial part of the life cycle of the piece. Actually, it can make it or break it. The issue is that to do a long-term project like the PPPs, you have to do a real, robust, up to the standards, inclusive feasibility study, where you can have all the aspects and all the risks and quantification of the risk and all that thing, so you can structure a project properly. The most important thing is that the well-prepared project attracts more private sector, so you have better competition, and attracts the banks to facilitate and to finance this project. The main obstacle for countries like ours, middle-income countries, that the cost of consultants and cost of advisory for the pre-feasibilities and feasibility study, and actually the project preparation documents, sometimes is significant. It can reach $1 million or $1.5 million, plus or minus, which is significant. Especially when you're using something like in parallel 5 or 6 or 7 projects. This means that you'll be needing something like $10 million or $11 million for project preparation. Sometimes the budget or the country does not allow this amount of money. So we have to, here comes the importance of the project preparation funds at the IFIs. And actually, we use that preparation funds from different countries, from different IFIs, like the World Bank, the EBRD, the African Development Bank, the IFC, and Asian Development Banks, and Islamic Development Banks. We used them all. And actually, they was giving us a lot of support, and actually, most of our successful projects were funded by IFIs. The main obstacle that we face here is to get this money. The money is available. but it's not off the shelf. You can just get your hand and pull it. It needs some preparation and actually some documents, and it takes some time to apply and to get this money allocated and approved. Sometimes it takes 6 to 8 months, and sometimes it takes almost a year to get approval for this funds. Then you can go through the procurement of and selection of the advisors, and then advisors are mobilized. It takes from 1 to 1.5 years to get your advisors, consultants on board. And this is one of the main obstacles, given that the politicians want things to be done yesterday. And this period of time actually is one of our obstacles. And that's why always the PPPs worldwide are blamed to be slow. A big portion is applying and allocating these funds. In Egypt, I started in 2015, 2016, trying to do something called the Egypt Project Preparation Fund. And I started, and the idea behind this was to put all the available funds from different donors and development banks in one pool, so we can get from this pool of money to support this project preparation. Because some of the donors, some of the countries have $200,000, $500,000. Okay, they are not enough for one transaction, so you have to deal with this 200 and another deal with this 500, and to put them together takes a lot of time, and it will never support one project that you need $800,000 or $1 million for project preparation for the entire cycle. I started, and I didn't succeed in the first round because I was talking with all IFIs on the same time, all developed banks at the same time. And the idea was not that mature by that time. So the main obstacle that I faced was who will be managing the fund, which procurement guidelines will be applicable, the World Bank, the EBRD, the IFC, the African Development Bank guidelines, which one? And actually, it didn't work out properly. Recently, I started in a different approach, and actually we succeeded, and I want to present this structure. We have one major IFP development bank, which is the EBRD. So we're talking with the EBRD because they already, the EBRD was selected by us because they already managed to do a similar fund with Greece in a different way, but we took the idea from there. So they have the experience, so things can expedite more faster. The EBRD here will not put all the money. The EBRD will be the custodian, will be the hub or the manager of the fund, where all the other donors will put their trust funds to the EBRD, and then it will be put to the EPPF, which we call it the Egypt Project Preparation Fund. The initial volume of the Egypt Project Preparation Fund is 10 million euros, where Egypt will put 1 million euro, and the EBRD, through other trust funds and other donors, will put 9 million euros. We started with almost $5 million, 5 million euros, with Egypt put its share, and the EBRD through other donors like the GIF and other donors, they inserted or they injected the almost 4.25 million euros, and Egypt put its share. How this fund will work? Well, actually, we're in the final phase. The agreement of this fund will be signed next month. Okay, we took almost 11 to 12 months to reach this agreement. Okay, and through this fund, the mandate of this fund is to do feasibility studies, and project preparation the documents, which is the draft, the contract, the tender documents, and all the way, and through advisors that will be hired through this fund, okay, and under the procurement guidelines of the EBRD, because they are the managing entity, okay, and by the end of the day, we'll have the advisors on board within 8 to 10 weeks maximum. The fund is there, and the advisory panel will be there, so we can select the advisors in a very rapid procurement system. As you can see in this chart, the project, the EPPF, Egypt Project Preparation Fund, will not only support project preparation, it will also support the policies that we need to adopt or we need to change as the things develop. So supporting the policy or changing policies as we go, advisors required for this will be supported by the fund. Also, which is very important, the capacity building, dealing with advisors and receiving the report and the financial models and all this kind of documents coming from the advisors is not an easy game.
Yes.
Managing advisors and dealing with the advisors require some kind of capacity in-house. So this will be also used to how to read the feasibility study, how to read the financial model, how to scrutinize all this. So this will be also in the mandate of this Egypt Project Preparation Fund. The most important thing here, that this fund is, as the PDF, it's a revolving fund. So the successful bidder will pay back to the fund the success fees, which is the revolving fund. Definitely, the EBRD managing this will have some management fees, which is almost 4 to 5% of this funding to hire and to manage this fund. This is briefly what we've done, and actually it's coming to a success. And we have already, this is another important thing, is that before signing the contract or the agreement of this fund, we have to have some projects already prepared so we can start immediately. This is very important because funds like this at some other entities are kept dormant, and actually if it's dormant for 1 year, 2 years, the fund will be cancelled. Thank you very much.
Atter, thank you very much, and look forward to exploring more of the lessons in this process altogether. But now I want to move to Syed to tell us a little bit about the practical experiences. I understand you're going to present quickly Bangladesh and Uzbekistan on the project preparation facilities. Syed, please.
Thank you much for that. And I'd like to commend Mikhail on it's a wonderful report. And indeed, I wish this report was available about 12, 13 years ago when I first looked at the Bangladesh example. I was trying to develop the whole PDF facility. So what I would like to do is I'm picking on a presentation that Mikhail put forward and drawing out a few things and then talking about my experiences around that. So I've got about 4 to 5 minutes, and I would just like to maybe pick out 4 or 5 points from that sort of narration that Mikhail gave. One of the first things he talked about was about why. Why is a PDF facility used? Now, he covered a large number of points. I would like to sort of emphasize maybe 2 things that sort of came about in our initial discussions. I'm taking my memory back to about 12 years here. First thing is that at that time, availability of sort of these PDF facilities were not there. So the new GI facility and so on were not available. So most of this was done by government's own budgets. Now, the issue is a few things. One is PPP projects preparation costs are far, far higher than typical projects. So there's a higher amount of sort of support needed for these consultancies to be carried out. And the second thing was they tended to cover a number of budget cycles. So you may have started the project in terms of a pre-feasibility or scoping, by the time you've gone to transaction, you may have gone to 2 or 3 cycles of budgets. And there was very difficult to actually try and reserve budgets in the corresponding year for a project you started today. So there was a need for somehow to ring fence money to be carried out for investing in this upfront project feasibilities, so that we can be assured that if a project pre-feasibility was found to be positive, we could have carried on and done the detailed feasibility study and the transaction. So one was all practicality in terms of the existing systems did not necessarily allow a multi-year facility that could be used for a specific project. The second thing, and this sort of came out mainly through discussion experience, was in many cases, a lot of the ministries were not familiar with PPPs, and therefore there was not necessarily a keenness to really use the department's own consultancy budgets to do PPP projects. So there was a need to support them and work with them to encourage them to champion it. So having access to this separate fund and saying that actually this consultancy budget, the PDF facility, can be used to support you in terms of your project development on a PPP basis actually worked. So it actually worked to help neutral, or in some cases, agencies, ministries didn't want to do PPPs, encourage them to actually look at exploring the options of PPP. So that's 2 points I wanted to add in terms of why PPP, in terms of the context that I looked at. Another point that Mikkel made was about source of funds. I mean, where do the funds are coming from? In our case, in Bangladesh, when I was looking at it, the source was purely government. So all the funds came from government, and it was a total budget of about $25 million at that time. 50% was dispersed initially, and the 50% was to be dispersed later on. However, we did change the regulations to allow other donors, other agencies to also contribute to that PDF facility. But during the time I was there, this option was never taken up or never carried forward, and mainly because of a certain complexity. And this is something as a sort of lesson for people to think about, is the facility that was created in Bangladesh was designed for all forms of procurement and sectors of procurement that could be carried out in Bangladesh. So therefore, it would cover open tender projects, it would cover private initiation or unsolicited projects, and would also cover priority or direct negotiation projects, or all 3 modalities. As soon as a donor would come in, then there would have to be a need to carve out some of this to make sure it meets with the donor's own requirements. And therefore, some of this would not necessarily match. So therefore, you would need to create a sort of ring fence a certain amount of the PDF facility to adhere to that and have a separate governance structure around it. So it would just complicate the whole arrangement. And therefore, that's something that we never sort of looked into in terms of taking forward. And another thing to also point out, again, it comes in terms of the money from government and how do you treat the money? The question is the government going to give the money to the PDF facility as a grant? Or is it going to be a loan, a reimbursable loan, where the PDF facility for the successful completion of the projects will have to take the success fees and then pay back to the Ministry of Finance? So is it loan, is it grant? At that time, I was quite clear that it can only be a grant. And then there's a certain reason I said that. And one of the reasons was that if it became a loan, then there would be a certain amount of risk awareness by all the people involved, and therefore there will be a reluctance to take forward any projects which were not shortcut or confirmed to be bankable, and therefore a lot of projects would not have been explored. You'd only look at those so simple and easy to do projects and nothing more, and we would not have been able to explore projects in a wider number of areas. So it had to be a grant in my mind, but the point I made was we want to make it a sustainable grant, and that's where this success fee element came in. So it's a grant. The grant goes to the PDF facility. It's retained by the PDF facility, but then we use the success fees in order to bolster the returns and make sure that we don't need, or we need less future contributions from the government. So that's the reason we did it on a sort of grant basis, but the PDF itself is subject to success fee and revolving, so that it can grow and continue. But that created another element of difficulty, and that was, in terms of success fees, how do you charge it? Do you charge it on every single project? If you charge it on every single project, it's quite clear that smaller projects, you would actually make it less viable if all the full success fees were recovered compared to the larger projects, simply because of the scale. So we actually gave that discretion to the committee that was in charge of the PDF, and they could determine the amount of success fees that would be charged. And from some of the larger projects, they could overcharge it. So the whole idea was that you could actually look at it in a portfolio basis and try and use the excess returns you make on the larger projects to cover for the smaller projects in order to make sure that the whole portfolio is balanced. Two more points and I'll stop for this round. One is about control. This was actually quite a discussion that went into a lot of sort of angles in terms of people's opinions, in terms of who actually controls the PDF facility. I actually was clear that it should be controlled by the PPP unit, fully by the PPP unit and no one else. And Atter mentioned it in his talk just now, that from a government policy perspective, they want the project and they want it now. And therefore, speed of execution was really, really, really important. I remember in one of my debriefings with the minister, I was asked, so how is it going? And I said, well, once I finish procurement, I'll find out. Because it had been a year and I was still going through the procurement process to appoint consultants to do the project, let alone do the project. And that actually signaled the need to have greater control and authority by the PPP unit in order to take these things forward. So control was left within the PPP unit, but it was then devolved into an interministerial committee who would actually oversee the procurement process to make sure it was transparent and fair. The last point I want to make is the scope. Mikhail, in his presentation, he talked about the scope. He talked about in the project context in terms of the life cycle of the project that he covers. I want to give you a slightly different sort of perspective as well. So yes, quite clearly, project development facilities by nomenclature is to do with projects. But what I did find was, in terms of running the PPP unit, we needed consultants for many different purposes, not just projects. We needed in-house advisors and consultants to help with some of the institutional development. We needed consultants to help out with the regulatory and policy frameworks. We needed consultants to help with the marketing, communications, and so on. It was quite difficult actually to access funds for these. So what we did was we actually changed the PDF regulation we issued in 2012, 3 years later, also 4 years later, in order to allow not only projects, but a bunch of other support mechanisms to be supported. This included training, conferences, bid conferences, and investment programs, policies, regulation, and so on. So therefore, for the PPP unit, that PDF facility became the only facility that would be needed for it to execute and carry out all of its needs without having to go back to the Ministry of Finance and request further funding. And that actually did indeed really, really help to accelerate a lot of the regulatory policies that we needed to execute. So just these 5 points I want to share with you at this stage, and happy to take more questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's super practical in terms of the experience of Bangladesh, and I have several questions that I'd love to ask later on. But now let's move to the African Development Bank and Ekow. Lots of ideas and plans and a lot of experience also from the NEPAD IPPF. Tell us, pick one case or two and tell us how was it structured and how the African Development Bank is supporting those project preparations.
Okay, thank you, Ede. I'll try and focus on the NEPAD Infrastructure Project Preparation Facility, which was established around 2002 at the G8 Summit by Canada and the African Development Bank, originally as an untied bilateral fund, which later transformed around 2005 into what we call a multi-donor trust fund with the entry of Denmark into the Infrastructure Project Preparation Facility. Of course, this is hosted and administered by the African Development Bank since its establishment. And the Infrastructure Project Preparation Facility is targeted at infrastructure projects in general. It has mostly been public sector infrastructure projects, and until lately that we've created a window to look at support public-private partnership projects. But I'd like to emphasize here that for the NEPAD Infrastructure Project Preparation Facility, the sole focus is on regional infrastructure projects. And so the objectives of the NEPAD IPPF is to assist regional member countries, regional economic communities to prepare high-quality, viable regional infrastructure projects within the energy sector, water sector, transport, ICT sectors, which at the end of the day will be bankable and solicit financing from both public and private sources in support of our objectives. And of course, also, part of the objective is to support the creation of an enabling environment for infrastructure projects, and also targeted capacity building to enhance infrastructure development and sustainability. In terms of some of the eligible activities or areas which the facility focuses on is around defining the project, pre-feasibility studies, feasibility studies, doing detailed engineering designs, social and environmental impact assessments, climate risk assessments, project structuring, PPP transactions, like I mentioned lately, that we've added on, and technical assistance and support to financial close. We also get involved in non-project-related activities around strategic and analytical work, evaluation work around maybe a country wants to prepare a business plan relating to an area, knowledge generation, dissemination, as well as donor outreach and stakeholder engagements generally. Of course, in terms of our source of funding, funding comes from the African Development Bank itself as a contributor. We have Germany, we have Canada, we have the United Kingdom, we have Norway, Denmark, and Spain, all being donors to the NEPAD Infrastructure Project Preparation Facility. And since its establishment to date, we've committed close to about 119 million United States dollars. And out of through this, we've been able to mobilize close to about 11.6 billion United States dollars, of which about 4.4 billion has been targeted at what we call the PIDA projects. And then for every dollar that we've committed as an infrastructure facility, we've been able to attract about $354 million in downstream financing for physical implementation of projects. Since inception, we've approved about 108 projects. 71 of these projects have been completed, but 61 of them are related to investment projects, while the others are project related activities. Currently, there are about 27 ongoing projects. We have about 10 projects that have been canceled as a result of several issues, maybe delays in procurement activities of the entity which is involved in attracting the facility from us. In terms of governance, I'd like to. So I've spoken about the source of funding, some of the eligible activities, and then some of the achievements to date in terms of projects that we've committed to. In terms of our governance and legal structure, we have a governance and legal structure such that you have the AfDB Board of Governors sitting at the top of the governance and legal structure, and then the AfDB Board of Directors, and then below it we have what we call the Oversight Committee. And normally the Oversight Committee members include members who are the current donors to the NEPAD IPPF facility. And then, of course, you have the NEPAD IPPF Secretariat, which sits within the Infrastructure Partnerships Division of the bank, where I belong to. In terms of our process, investment process, I'll call it. It usually starts with the project initiation or identification, where we try to sensitize recipients, potential recipients. So potential recipients here, like I did mention, will be the regional member countries, regional economic countries, specialized regional infrastructure, institutions, river basins, etc., on the continent, because at the end of the day, our target is on regional infrastructure projects. And so then they now submit requests for funding from these clients. And then once these requests are received, we go through an initial, what we call a strategic alignment assessment, to see whether these projects are aligned to the countries who are involved in the project, their national development plans, regional development plans, amongst others. We go through a technical screening, and then based on the strategic alignment assessment and the technical screening, we now put them, those that are successful are included in our pipeline and work plan for the year. There we now move to what we call the project appraisal and approval of a project information memorandum that is prepared. And then, of course, once that is approved, there's a signing of the grant agreement, project implementation, supervision, and then the project completion and closure. So most of our funds are mostly grants, but then recently we introduced the reimbursable grants window, targeted mostly at potential PPP, regional PPP projects, where at the end of the day, just like colleagues on this panel have already alluded to find a way to, get reimbursed for the grant money that may have been provided, so that then this can be recycled towards other projects. Just a bit of thoughts around. Of course, there are challenges, opportunities that we see. Certainly, the opportunities exist. There's that high demand for project preparation. For project preparation on the continent, there's huge demand, and we are not able to meet all that demand. Challenges around project preparation funding, of course, remains largely inadequate compared to the need for bankable projects. And so for us, that is why on the NEPAD IPPF side, we know that facility is not enough to support our projects. And so we encourage and try to push for co-financing and partnering with other facilities, project preparation facilities within the African Development Bank and outside of the African Development Bank, in order to drive and push and bring to market projects that are well prepared and structured, be it PPP or be it a purely public infrastructure project. Of course, some solutions and innovations, I think I've alluded to some already, where recently we've introduced a reimbursable grants window within the NEPAD IPPF facility in order to, drive PPP or private sector participation in infrastructure projects. And of course, leveraging other donor funding to get us going. Probably, I don't know, if there's still time, or maybe I can.
Then we can get into the lessons and experiences in the next round. Excellent presentation.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Now we're going to move into 2 countries that are beginning the journey in terms of the project preparation facilities. First, we go to Zambia, and then we're going to go to Kenya, where we want to hear about their aspirations, the initial steps that they have taken, any reflections into this process. So Irene, you are first. Tell us a little bit about what has been happening in Zambia in terms of project preparation fund.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned at the beginning, Zambia's PPP journey is relatively new, and most of these initiatives are coming on board following the experiences that we've had. I think one of the experience that I can give you, which I have hands-on, is one of the projects which was financed under the SADC PPDF, which is Kasomeno Mwenda Road Toll Project, which I think was signed, the concession agreement was signed in 2006, and we are still grappling with it. I think that's when we are beginning to truly getting through it. And that's one of the reasons that really pushed ourselves and the team when I was sitting in the PPP department to say, I think when you look at these PPDF that are available, they are more focusing into the regional focus, projects that have regional nature. And meanwhile, we have these projects that are very good projects, but do not have some characteristics of a regional nature. And as Zambia, I think we were losing out or missing out in terms of accessing this facility. So we needed to find a way of ensuring that we have projects that are bankable and we'll be able to sell them to access private capital. And with the team, when I was sitting in the PPP department, we really pushed when we were reviewing our act to include the provision for project preparation support, because we knew that we saw that most of our projects could not go through, get the feasibility studies done because of the cost implications. We had very limited capacities within the ministries or the institutions that were coming up with these projects. We had limited capacities even within the department itself, now called the office, to really structure projects that would be sellable out there to the private sector. And that's where we saw that quite a number of the projects did not reach financial close, and we still struggle to see how best we can do them. And for us, we said, okay, what is the best way for us to get through this challenge that we've had? Was to propose a setting up of the PPDF in the legal framework, which was being amended. Fortunately, it was amended and enacted last year. And the critical things that we are looking at that act, the PPDF provision in the act, one is to support initial project development, to ensure that if projects need feasibility studies, we need to ensure that those projects have feasibility studies undertaken. We also need to develop capacity within the office that is running with PPP projects, as well as the various stakeholders that are introducing this initiative to finance their project using PPP model financing. And lastly, because we were just building this capacity and we need more support from the various stakeholders, one of the key issues that we looked at is to also provide, this PPDF would provide resources for us to engage transaction advisors to help us structure these projects that will be able to, which will be able to be bankable and be able to sell and attract more private capital into investing in these projects. And in terms of the structure, in terms of where the resources were going to come from, of course, given the fiscal challenges that we've had, the fiscal space is small. We needed to be very innovative in terms of where do we get these resources that will help this PPDF for us to get the good projects that will be able to sell there and get private money. One was to look at a percentage of fee from the solicitation documents that we are getting. It's one of the sources that we get. Say, this is one innovation that we can bring in for us to have some resources for this. Although it's very small, but it will make a difference in terms of building this PPDF for the country. Then the other component that we're looking at is, of course, from government revenues. On annual basis, government is supposed to appropriate a certain proportion to the fund to help it move, especially in meeting the objectives that we had put forth. Then we also looked at areas of course, having this. I think we had consulted or reached out to the number of cooperating partners to assist us to have some resources put into the department or the office to help us build a bank of bankable projects. However, we didn't have a legal framework that would support that interaction with our cooperating partners to put resources directly into the fund. So one of the reason that pushed us to have this is to have the PPDF legislated, is to give an opportunity of other cooperating partners that who are willing to come and support the country in terms of improving the bankability of our project. So one of the sources that we have set ourselves to get the resources from is the cooperating partners. Of course, even any other resources that will be available, donation, grants that will come into the fund, will really go a long way for us to really build that bank of bankable projects. In terms of governance, this PPDF is rightly sitting in the Ministry of Finance, though it's being operationalized under the Public-Private Partnership Office. Those are the ones that will manage it when we start operating it. And of course, they will be guided by the Public Finance Management Law. We know that the current law has provided the office of the PPP office to be an autonomous sort of office to manage this fund. And that will give them a leeway to ensure that these funds are properly invested in feasibility studies and the other areas of assisting the country to develop those bank of projects that will require for us to be marketable on the market. And of course, the PPP department has given, although they've been given this leeway, they are still answerable to the Ministry of Finance to ensure that there's accountability, transparency in the way the resources are being utilized within the money that we are getting. So far, we have very little money that is still sitting because it's new. The act was set up last year. So we are hoping, and we are going to learn from other countries that have done this before in terms of how effectively we build that PPDF for us to really build the good project. It's unfortunate that some of these PPDF that are in the region are really focusing on regional projects, leaving out the projects that are really bankable within the country. I'll give you an example of the recently done project that we are doing, the Lusaka and Dollar project. It's a very good project, but most of the work was done internally, of course, with the internal resources. What we look forward with the number of projects that we have that are sitting under PPP and good viable projects can be financed using this PPDF facility that we've set up. And we are hoping that more resources will come in and reducing on the challenges that we've been having of projects not reaching financial close because maybe we didn't prepare them properly or we didn't structure them properly, or sometimes we didn't even structure the project properly, and as well as limited capacity. So for this, I think it is a plus for the country to have this opportunity to have, and we are hoping that we'll learn from the other countries, as already mentioned, that have used these opportunities. Because we are getting both the solicited projects and solicited projects. And when you look at the experience with the SADC PPDF fund, the project that I mentioned is more of unsolicited project. So it's also important that we look at the solicited project and how effective we can support them. I think that's where I can end for now.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Irene. I think that's a great description of the first steps and the vision and the lessons from something that didn't work and how to get the basic steps to really move forward. I'll come back with to get your reflections on lessons for other countries. And let's go to Kenya. So Johnson has the word now to also tell us a little bit about the first few steps that are being taken in the Investment and Development Corporation. So.
Thank you, Eddie. I think this is a very timely conversation, especially for the audience that are connecting from Kenya. There's a very heated debate about PPPs that has reinforced the importance of project preparation funds in enhancing the success of PPP projects. As I said, I was appointed to join the board of the Taita Taveta Investment and Development Corporation. Just to put this into context, This is one of the 47 devolved counties in Kenya. And this is one of the counties that is facing acute water shortage, despite having some of the biggest freshwater sources in the country that are already serving some of the nearby counties in the country. So what the county government did, and because of the enactment of the new PPP Act of 2021, that now recognizes these devolved governments as substantive contracting authorities that can enter into PPP contracts, was to think as to how they could create a vehicle that is effective enough to be able to attract private sector investment. So you'll agree with me that being a new devolved government, and of course, being new to this model of procuring projects, there are quite a lot of challenges that we needed to navigate. And what the county did was to incorporate this company, which has the county government as the only shareholder. And the idea was for this vehicle to attract private sector expertise to be able to support the county government to attract private sector investments. So unlike my esteemed panelists, I want to share the experience as to how we've walked the journey with a number of partners to be able to access the project development funds in a way that we are going to be potentially the first county in Kenya to implement a PPP project. So I think the most important thing we had to do is to establish the need. So as I said, water was a big challenge in the county. We have a freshwater lake, freshwater source, and this was clearly a low-hanging fruit. So the idea was for us to put together a proposal that is able to unlock some of these funds so as to help us undertake further studies to evaluate the viability of the PPP model to procure that water and have it distributed across the entire county. Eddie, we are talking about a county that is approximately 17,000 square kilometers, and 62% of this landmass is covered by the biggest national park in Kenya. And the population, the majority of the population is actually living in the extremes of this county. So a challenge is to pump this water from the end of this county 100 kilometers from the source to be able to serve the population that lives on the edges of the county. So what we've done is we were able to put together a project implementation team, and we're very clear that we wanted to make sure that that team brought on board the different entities of the county. In this case, the county government, the investment corporation, and also the proposed off-taker of the project, which is the water service provider of the county. So all these entities of the county were able to come together in the project implementation team. And for the last 8 months, we've been working together to make sure that we are putting together a very compelling case that has allowed or enabled us to be able to get the interest of two partners that, as we speak, we are hoping to get $1.1 million US dollars to be able to support the feasibility studies and also the procurement phase of this project. And the idea is to make sure that we are working together with the national government. So we've worked together with the Directorate of Public-Private Partnerships to make sure that all these steps have been authorized from the beginning, and also to make sure that whatever we are doing is done in line with the PPP regulatory framework. And most importantly for us, we want to make sure that we can be able to build a playbook that can be replicated across the 47 counties in Kenya, because we have similar challenges in all these counties. Water is a challenge, and of course, the biggest challenge is that these counties are not able to raise financing to be able to meet the cost of undertaking quality feasibility studies for these projects to be able to proceed. So that is what we've been doing. It has been a journey, but I think the most important thing that has helped us accelerate this process, because we are talking of approximately 8 months now, we were very clear from the onset what we want to achieve through this project. We want to make sure that as much as water PPP projects are not attractive, we want to create a structure that allows different partners to be able to contribute into the building of this project so that the water will be affordable and accessible to a majority of the population. So from the onset, that has been very clear. And so we've done the heavy lifting work and of course, in conjunction with his partners to make sure that we can be able to get the process right, so that the entire approval process is done accordingly. So I think in the next session, I'll be able to share more experiences and the challenges and what other devolved governments, whether municipal entities, county governments, can be able to learn from the challenges and lessons that we have experienced to be at the point we are currently.
And Johnson, you're bringing a very different perspective, which is not a PPP unit, but actually a county government that is taking the leadership to get these things organized and moving. Thank you so much. We'll come back to you. Now, what I'm going to be doing now is a round of very practical lessons of experience from our panelists. So I encourage the audience to take paper and pencil, because these are going to be practical tidbits of experience, tricks of the trade, things that they have learned through the many years of working in these PPF, project preparation facilities. And I'm going to follow the same order, going back to Atter. Atter, if you're going to tell other countries, and you began to describe a few of those lessons, but practical lessons out of the process that you have gone through, things to do, things to avoid. Go ahead.
The main problem that we faced, and most of the PP units face in this regards, is that when we have a project, we start knocking doors to find financiers, either through grants or through revolving funds or through any of the project preparation fund, which would actually take some extra more time. The thing is that you start knocking all doors now and see which kind of facilities available and the regulations and the requirements of the facility. I want to give you one example. For instance, I'm a board director on the MCDF. The MCDF is one of the fast facilities that gives grants to the project preparation. However, they are very much, their mandate is the connectivity, cross-border projects, transportation, communication, power grids, all these things. Other projects like utilities, desalination, hospitals, whatever, is out of their mandate. So you cannot, if you have one of these projects, you cannot address them. You have to prepare which fund to address for which kind of projects. And you have to get their templates or their project file that you have to submit in the way that could be accepted immediately. Because sometimes I'd have made this mistake before. I put the files together from my point of view, and I submitted. They required a lot of questions. So I have to respond to this question from my technical people and from the administrative authority. And it takes extra time. So this is one of the things that I want them to avoid. Get your things prepared and create your pipeline. Start discussing the pipeline with different donors even before you start tendering. If you want to tender this project after next year or the year after, start having this pipeline, discuss this pipeline with the different donors, and start ticking. This would go for that EBRD, and that's for the PVDF, and this would the MCDF, and that's it. Thank
Excellent.
you.
Sounds very good, Atter. Very practical. Thank you so much. And we go to Syed, 2-3 practical advice from AIIB as you talk to different clients. Things to do, things to avoid on PPFs.
Okay, so on PPF, so I think three things I want to just highlight that you need to sort of look at. So the PPFs are simply a facility for drawing on to get your projects done, right? So the focus needs to be on how can you accelerate and get the projects done as quick as possible. How can you accelerate the project procurement processes and so on. So first suggestion, other countries have done that, is I would suggest that you create a panel of consultants, so that when you're doing the procurements, you don't have to start from RFQs and RFPs and go through the whole process, but you actually have a framework of consultants on a platform which you can draw down on a quick selection basis. So that's the first way, and that can really save time. In Bangladesh, I had to take special permission to do that, but it saved us on average 4 to 5 months for each procurement that we were doing. Next suggestion, and that's very important, is if you have a Minister of Finance who have given you the grant, sort of 2 million, 5 million, whatever the amount is, you need to be able to show that those amounts are being used. So there's a bit of a balancing exercise in terms of time. If you have the funds too early and you don't disperse it quick enough, then there's obviously expectation management you have to do. On the other hand, as Atter was saying, if you have the projects and then you're having to look for the funds, then it's you're delaying it. So I think timing is very important, and that depends on your whole regulatory environment, the procurement environment, PPP program, and making those sinking in. The last point I want to suggest to you is procurements are difficult, they're not easy, and we're talking about using quite a lot of money here. On average, PP transactions can be $500,000 to $1.5 to $2 million each transaction. So there is a large amount of money at stake here. So I would suggest that all the PPP units have very, very strong procurement teams, experts in procurement who can really envisage and work out all the complexities and address them. So those are my three suggestions, which is maturity of your pipeline, which is having an expert procurement team who can help you with the procurement in terms of taking that forward, and having consultancy frameworks in place. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those three very practical points, Syed. So I think that you are setting up the tone for to the other panelists. So Ekow, lessons and practical things as you engage with clients in Africa for PPPs. What to do with project preparation facilities? What to do? What to avoid?
Right. Thank you, Eddie, once again. Now, so for countries who are looking to establish project development facilities, it needs to be very clear what the governance and institutional structure around these project development facility is. How it to be hosted, which entity to be managing them, how funds will flow into that project development facility. That whole governance and institutional framework surrounding it is very, very, very important. That's something that needs to be very, very, very clear. In addition, I know we are focusing on PPPs. There are countries who have been looking at project development facilities or project preparation facilities that are looking at not only PPPs, but traditional infrastructure projects as well. There needs to be clarity exactly what that objective is. Is it going to be solely focused on PPP, or is it going to be a mix? In addition, a must-have certainly will have to be the guidelines surrounding how these project preparation facility will operate, how to access them, what will there be any contributions from the government contracting authorities who may be wanting to tap into such project development facilities that may exist in a country is very important. Risk management framework is important to have in managing these project preparation facilities. Monitoring and evaluation mechanisms of how these funds that have been utilized for project preparation are being implemented. Some of the things to avoid, very importantly, has to do with project selection. We need to try and avoid selecting projects based solely on political considerations rather than the economic viability and social impact. So that's very, 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 very important. In terms of tricks of the trade, for us, partnerships, just from the division I come from, is all about partnerships and collaboration. Is very, very important. Partnering with and collaborating with multilateral institutions is very important when it comes to, putting together all these project preparation facilities and implementing them. So that's on the one side. On the other side, I think Atter may have mentioned it, but I'd like to re-emphasize that. Of course, most multilateral development finance institutions host tons of project preparation facilities. Some are either sector-specific, some are based on certain thematic areas. And so it is important that countries really do a scoping assessment of what facilities exist out there within the DFI space, and have a knowledge about what the requirements of these facilities look out for, and try to position their projects to tap into some of these facilities. Maybe on the DFI side, maybe we've not been doing enough to promote the various facilities that are hosted or housed in our various institutions. And maybe that's an area we need to do more on. Well, I'd like to end here, and back to you, Eddie. Thank you.
Very practical, and especially I like this scoping strategy from countries to see what is it that need to be done. Atter also referred to that. You need to start planning who's going to be talking, who's going to be tapping into what institution to do what process, what conditions. Irene, let me get to Zambia, because even though you have begun this process, I can see that you have been very systematic about thinking what to do, what not to do. If another country in Africa or another region wants to start that journey and wants to take the first few steps, what advice would you give them?
Thank you very much. I think the first advice I would give to a country or a developing country that wants to set up a PPDF is to ensure that you bring on board both the political economy and the technical economy together to support the investment in the PPDF. Otherwise, if you leave one out, then you will not be able to proceed. On the other side, on the political side, they'll think it's a waste of resources, let's put it on something else. But what is very critical for us is to ensure that we have bankable projects, and on those bankable projects to be able to attract more capital, private capital. So it's important that both stakeholders are brought on board to ensure that we have projects that will be able to sell out there. Then the other point that I can bring on board, I think from my colleague, the previous colleague was talking about the NEPAD, and I think I'd mentioned the SADC PPDF. I think it's also important, we are calling upon the DFIs to ensure that they streamline the processes of countries to access these financing, in addition to what we already have established in our own countries. Because I think from both the discussion that my colleague has said, the projects are more focused on the regional ones. What about those good projects that are within the countries? I think they need to create that relationship that will improve the resources coming into the PPDF that has been formed into the country, as well as the countries tapping from the regional PPDF. Then one other thing that needs to be clear is to avoid. I talked about the inclusion of the political economy and the technical side of it. I think when it comes from the political economy, their interest is to have things move very quickly. And once we move things quickly, we end up not achieving what we had set ourselves to do. The projects may not even reach financial close. I think that those are some of the examples that we've seen, that some of the projects that have stalled have not gone beyond commercial close, have some history of having these quick wins. So these PPDF, I think, need to be effectively be used for us to ensure that as we are even engaging these other players in this, we are not running on the path of fast-tracking projects without following the due process. So the PPDF will be good. Then the other thing which I think should be avoided is to have what we know that the PPDF, we have public investment are both those that are financed using the private sector, which is PPP, and the tradition. And in some countries, you tend to develop parallel project preparation facilities. And those project preparation facilities they are all requesting resources from the constrained fiscal space. I think what is important for us, I think, is to have some sort of synergies to create even an overall PPDF that will cater for both the PPP projects as well as the traditional projects. That's my take from this.
Thank you so much for those super practical pieces of advice, Irene, and I like very much the speed for political masters. Johnson, you have the last word in terms of practical lessons of experience from the initial steps that you have taken as a Kenyan county.
Yeah, I think my advice to other counties and municipals or subnational entities that are starting up, I think we cannot just sit and wait for the project development funds that are housed at the national government. I think there are some of these funds that are out there that are able to support your projects to move forward. So I think that is the most important thing. Let's quickly identify the need, what we want to achieve, and package that in a way that it's able to attract the support of these funds. And then, of course, as you start the journey, I think it's very important that you have the right team on board. This is quite a lengthy process that requires navigating quite a number of challenges and stakeholders. And as such, it's very important that you have the right team, a team with the right skills and knowledge to be able to put together the entire process. As much as we are starting now, it's important for us to have a long-term view of the entire cycle of that project, so that as we devise the terms of reference for the consultants that are going to be contracted through these funds, then we are very clear that what we want to be done by these consultants. And so you can see the level of knowledge that is required in that team. So have the right team, have champions in that team. And by champions, I mean people with the technical know-how of how PPPs work, so that they can guide the larger team to be able to move forward. And then, of course, stakeholder engagement is very important, especially for this new model that is coming to devolved entities. You have to make sure that the other teams understand what you're doing, so that you can manage expectations and get the full support from the entire team. And then, of course, lastly is the issue of political pressure. We definitely have faced this. As you know, politicians will want this project done like yesterday. It is not possible. We have to explain in a language that is understandable to the political class, so that we are able to move together to put together quality projects, so that when it's taken to the market, it's able to attract quality investment from the private sector. And as a parting shot, it is doable. We are doing this as one of the minority counties in Kenya. And I think this is a testament that even other counties and subnational entities can be able to do this through the support of PDFs. Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you, Hassan. And I'm going to beg the forgiveness of the audience for 5 additional minutes to ask one very practical question that has come up from these conversations. And if the panelists can keep it to a minute, the answer, that would be super useful. Syed, how do you convince the government of Bangladesh to put so much resources? Because here is, how do you make the case that those resources were needed? Go ahead, Syed.
I presented the government with a vision, and my vision was I wanted to get $14 billion of PPPs rolled out in the pipeline over the first 5 years. I linked that vision to the strategy that the government had put in place. And the strategy was that government had to increase investment in infrastructure by 6%, and 1/3 was to be done by PPPs. So I actually took those numbers, back solved it, and said that to do that, I need this amount of funds to really make it work. So I did go big. I did sort of really a big approach in terms of going in, but I did have the support of the finance minister at that time in terms of putting that in. But what made it very challenging is what I meant. It made it very challenging because I had the money and I needed to create the pipeline and get it moving. So that's why I gave the practical tip that you need to balance between the pipeline and when you have the funds.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Let me go back to Atter, who I believe is connected. Atter, why the decision to have EBRD manage the fund?
Number one, we have some good number of projects with the EBRD. Number two, in this special issue of the EPPF, as I mentioned, the EBRD signed with Greece on 2021 a similar fund. It's called the GPPF. However, it's completely different because the one in Greece, injected the entire amount of money. They didn't get money from other donors, but they asked the EBRD to manage this. So I want to capitalize on that. So I've got one of the donors who already in process of managing such fund. So I don't want to be an experiment track. So already took their experience to capitalize on. Plus EBRD as the World Bank, as the AIIB, and as the African Development are one of the old funds that they have, of old development banks that they already have a lot of trust funds available, so they would have capacity to get more money to the fund. So that's actually was the main reasons to select the EBRD.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Ekow, in the NEPAD facility, you have both public and private, and Irene was also mentioning the need to have that coordination. But then what incentives do you have in the project pipeline so that countries decide to go the PPP route? Because it's more complicated, it tends to be more expensive, and actually you charge them the success fee. Any incentives that you have to say, look, this project really should be a PPP? There are tremendous advantages. Any thoughts on that?
Well, thank you, Eddie. So, well, generally, like I did mention that we offer the grant window, the reimbursable grant for the PPPs, the grant window for the public infrastructure projects, and all being regional in nature. In fact, at that feasibility steady stage, where maybe they're doing it for a public infrastructure project, part of those studies certainly will look at what project delivery option makes sense, whether to fully pursue it as a traditional public infrastructure project, or probably look at private sector participation through various PPP options. And so I'll say, well, those are some of the slight maybe incentives maybe we may discuss with regional member countries, regional economic countries, in trying to drive some of these projects. But beyond the NEPAD IPPF, and because of the great demand for project preparation, maybe I just want to add this as a last bit to it. That is why, as an institution, we're now trying to set up a facility that is solely focused on PPP, which is Africa PPP Development Fund, which we don't have such a fund within the bank solely dedicated to PPP preparation. We have various facilities, all of them do a mix of public, some PPP, but then we think this APDF, which we are looking to establish, will sort of now further incentivize African countries to engage with us and drive their PPP projects. In this case, it looks at national projects, and so not necessarily regional projects. Yeah,
fantastic. That's very good. Irene, would you say that the IPDF is a solution or a part of the solution to your political masters who want to have projects done very, very fast? Is that something that you're using as an argument to say, look, let's put some money here and that'll help deliver those projects faster? Would you say that that's the case?
I think it should be a political solution to some extent, because if we already have an investment in the PPDF and we are able to undertake feasibility studies, we already have the bank of projects which we can still sell to the political group to say these are the projects which are aligning to your vision and the national development plan. So it is a solution for, especially for Zambia, because most of the projects that have been undertaken could not have had the feasibility studies, or the feasibility studies were done later on. And to some extent is very costly, because you have to relook at how much cost that you put in doing it. Then later on you realize that no, we needed to have done in a different way. So I think the PPDF will be a solution to our political needs in terms of ensuring that we don't see these projects that come in and you are told to move quickly. But if you have something that you can give them, they should be able to say, okay, this is a project that we want to run with as politicians. Yeah.
That sounds very good. And Johnson, last question on behalf of subnationals. Do you see a lot of support from the national government to the initiative that you're taking, or how are you building those coalitions so that the national government really support, does not interfere, is helpful to what you're doing?
Yeah, thank you, Eddie. I think for our case, we have significant support from the national government through the Directorate of Public-Private Partnership. And so it is through that support that we've been able to make this progress. And also, if you look at the law, it's very clear that before we undertake any feasibility studies, we must get clearance from the Directorate of PPP. So, I mean, given that structure in the regulatory framework, we are bound to work together. But I can say that there has been significant support. As we speak, we have staff from the national government that have been seconded to work with us, and just making sure that we get every process right and we speed up the entire process. So that is very important. We must work with the national government just to make sure that we're making progress forward.
Fantastic, Johnson. Thank you very much. And I want to thank all of the panelists. You have been, the insights that we're getting from this, from the very practical experience, are really unique in this conversation. So many thanks to that. Many thanks to the participants, because you have stayed a few extra minutes. I hope that you found this conversation useful. We will share the presentation. We will share the videos. I want to close with an invitation to join us for our next workshop series, our next edition of this workshop, which is going to be focusing on how to do PPPs for frontier technologies. When a city is trying to do new electric buses, when somebody wants to do a new renewable energy generation technology, how to incorporate those ideas into the PPPs, how to deal with the additional risk in that process. So we look forward to seeing many of you in our next workshop. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a fantastic conversation with the panel. All the best. See you soon.